Alrighty. Hello and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian, Pagan, and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Today I'm actually opening up the floor to Reconstructionism in general because I got a wonderful question about what kinds of starting advice would I have for Pagan Reconstructionists. Now this includes not only Kemetic, aka Egyptian, but also Roman, Hellenistic, aka Greek, Mesoamerican, Celtic, and well, those are your pagan Reconstructionists. What's interesting is you also have biblical Reconstructionists and Jewish Reconstructionists. But chances are those latter two aren't going to be watching this episode. So, about pagan Reconstructionism. There aren't a whole lot of books on that. There are a lot more books on Wicca and things like that. By the way, would Druidism count as a form of Reconstructionism? I'm throwing this question out for the audience. There are a few books on that, but a lot more on Wicca, and hardly any on Kemetic Reconstructionism. That's why I wrote my book, Following the Sun, because I wanted to try and cover that crowd. But obviously that book doesn't cover everything. There's a lot of other stuff that you can find out there, and especially if you're in a different branch of Reconstructionism. Where would you go? Where would you start looking? First thing I would say to do, check your archaeology research. Remember, the basis of all of these faiths is the archaeological record from these ancient civilizations. So that particular field, that discipline, is going to be your starting point. Books are your obvious first place to look. I've got 50 different books on ancient Egypt, and I just got a new one that I'm reading, the other day. But a lot of them are written for beginners, and sooner or later you start to see the same thing, repeated in different books. That and, we don't have unlimited pockets to find, every book there is. So the next thing to do would be to start looking in magazines, especially scholarly ones. Now, a good place to do that is universities. You don't have to be a student. You can go to most university libraries. They're free. You can look in, some of them actually have bound collections of magazines like Journal of Near Eastern Studies, Journal of Egyptian Archaeology. That helps if you're a Kemetic Reconstructionist. There are other areas and magazines for, other disciplines. And some of them kind of cross over. This is a magazine that you can find. I got this one in Barnes & Noble, Archaeology magazine. What's fun is, even though the feature article is about King Tut, there's another article in here about the ancient Southwest. There's another one in there about medieval Korea. All sorts of interesting things. There's even something about an undeciphered script from ancient India. And boy, there's a lot of argument about that. That's another thing. In archaeology, remember, you've got a bunch of academics and they're arguing back and forth. You'll have articles in magazines that say one thing, and then somebody will post a rebuttal in a future issue. And it's really good to be able to look at both of those. And depending on what area of history you're looking at, the arguments are going to be different. I'm sure there's all sorts of things about Stonehenge and what did it have to do with ancient Egypt. Oh goodness, there's so many of them. We've talked about a few of them in previous episodes. So, get to know who are the big names in your area of study. What are the pet theories? If you're going online, you can find a few things. It's wonderful because it's free, but I would recommend looking for PDF documents. Those tend to be scholarly articles and occasionally dissertations. I just found a great dissertation that was posted last year. They defended it sometime in September of 2009, and it was a wonderful article. It's a very large PDF file. But if you dig and you use the right keywords, you can probably find that for just about any topic you wanted. You may also find things from a site called JSTOR. That's not free if you're just researching on your own, but if you go to a university website, or not website, but their library, you go and you use their computer system, you can access JSTOR for free. So, the second thing, don't forget sociology. Now, in this case, I'm not saying to go and research it. I'm saying take a look at modern descendants of your particular focus. With Celtic, that's real easy. Look at the modern Irish. Roman, that's super easy, at least from my perspective, because our system of government, our calendars, and several of our holidays are all based off of Roman prototypes. Greeks too, not so much a basis, but classical literature looked to Greek philosophy, literature, and mythology. How many of us had to study, the Iliad in high school? So those are real easy to start from. Mesoamerican, I would say check powwows and what modern Native Americans are doing. Especially look at Mexicans. The Indian heritage in Mexico is much stronger than most people realize. And if you look at things like Dia de los Muertos that just passed, that's based off of an Aztec festival. There's a lot of other things. Someone I know wrote a book about Santa Muerte, the Saint of Death. You can check that out on Amazon. That is a figure that kind of borrows from Catholicism and Indian beliefs, and it figures heavily in the modern drug war in Mexico. So those are things that can give you a perspective on how would you apply ancient religion to a modern practice. With Egyptian, it's a little harder because Egypt is now a Muslim country. What's interesting is, of course, you've got the Coptics. That's Christianity, but they use the same language, or they use the Coptic language. It's a descendant of Egyptian. The Fellahin, that word refers to the rural farmers in Egypt. They still use practices that are kind of holdovers from ancient Egyptian. What's interesting is about 100 years ago, somebody did a study on them and found out that they were still using a lot of magic and what we would consider witchcraft. And it's really funny when you think about this as a predominantly Muslim country, but they still use witchcraft and things like that. That's kind of a holdover from ancient practices. Their calendar also uses month names that derive from the Egyptian months. Ancient Egyptians. Remember, that's something else to keep in mind. Egyptians are not gone. They're not using the exact same language and whatever else that we're studying, but they're still very much there. But you can also find parallels sometimes in other cultures that do similar things. One of the biggest epiphanies that I got was seeing how some of my Buddhist friends set up their shrines and made offerings and things like that, and then looking at the pictures of offering scenes in my books and going, oh, hey, well, the ancient Egyptians probably did it pretty similar to this. And that put it in concrete terms, which is really, really helpful. So kind of, look at what is going on in other cultures that might give you some ideas. Now, the last tip, practice safe sects. There are a lot of groups out there for various Reconstruction religions. There's several of them in Kemetic Reconstructionism. I'm not even going to address that. I know there's at least one Roman Reconstruction group and several Hellenistic. I'm not nearly as familiar with that. Check out these groups and see if they'd be a good fit for you or not. Don't join the first one that you see, because some people have joined and really just not gotten along very well. Talk to not just current members, but find some ex-members. That can be a little hard, but if you just Google, type in your keywords, you'd be surprised what you'd find. Because current members will tell you what's going on now, and they can certainly tell you what they like about a particular group. But ex-members can tell you why they left, whether it was a good fit for them. They might be able to tell you whether it would be a good fit for you or not. And the more people you talk to, the more you can compare and get a broader picture of the group you're talking about. Forums are good, but lurking is better. That's always the case. If anybody's familiar with 4chan and the rules of the internet, lurk more is one of the rules. So, hopefully this will be helpful for you if you are not just an Egyptian pagan or a Kemetic practitioner, but any kind of pagan Reconstructionist. And if you've got any more questions, go ahead and post them here. and if I can't answer it, hopefully there will be somebody else who can. So, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you Senebti.